The 2018 NFL playoffs are here, and we have wild card playoff games to preview, as well as the latest Super Bowl odds. And as a special bonus, a preview of the college football championship game, which takes place on Monday night. So stay tuned for in-depth analysis on every game this weekend with the latest trends, injury updates, odds, and picks, as OFN NFL preview for Wild Card Weekend with Tony Mejia on the Our Football Radio Network starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to OFN NFL preview for Wild Card Weekend in the NFL with Tony Mejia, independent sports columnist and exclusive handicapper at VegasInsider.com for this Friday, January 5th, 2018. So, Tony, we still have about a month to go before it's all over, but for now, we've got a bunch of games. This might be actually the biggest weekend, or maybe the most fun weekend in the entire season for football fans, because you get 4 games in the NFL, and then it all concludes with a national championship game in college football on Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I like next week just because the quality of football you presume is going to be better. But yeah, you're right with the bonus at the end. Although it's the national runner-up championship.
The National Runner-Up Championship, okay. What is
UCF is obvious. UCF is
obviously yes, I forgot about that. By the way, I love that. I couldn't be more happy with the way that Central Florida is digging it to the committee and college football. I absolutely love it and applaud it, and that is hopefully going to expedite the 18 playoff format real soon. Yeah,
it's a fantastic troll job. Kudos to everybody in the administration for standing behind it, and White for orchestrating it, because he's not making a mockery of it. He's just saying, hey, we're going to pay our championship bonuses. We're the champs, and we're the only undefeated team. We just beat the team that beat both championship game combatants. So
the runner-ups.
Logically, it's a national runner-up game as far as I'm concerned.
The other Danny White.
Exactly, yes.
For those old-time football fans.
He's part of the esteemed AD family, because I know his brother was at Duke, or is at Duke, and so they got the AD dynasty, so the White dynasty.
All right, awesome. Well, okay, so the national runner-up game is on Monday night. We'll take an early look at that a little bit later on in the program. But for now, it's the NFL. Big story that's coming out today. It looks like it's going to be official real soon, and that is that John Gruden is going to get a 10-year, $100 million deal. You know what? Having him back is not a surprise. Kind of thought it was going to be Tampa. First of all, I must say I feel as bad as it is sometimes to suffer as Jet fans, and I always try to take the positive approach, because Jet fans are clinically depressed all the time. So I always try to take the positive approach in my programs, without being too rosy when it comes to making sure that there's no bias in there. But and here's a perfect example of why it's not all that bad to be a Jet fan, because I couldn't imagine what it is right now to be a Cincinnati Bengal fan or a Tampa Bay Buck fan, but especially a Bengal fan. I mean, I feel real sorry for those fans. I really do. My heart goes out.
Yeah, you're saying at least your team makes some changes.
Yeah, and, there's something to be.
I hear you.
There's something that you can actually. Hey, there's a shot. We got something. We're heading in the right direction. But for Tampa Bay fans, just to know that you are not going to win with Dirk Cutter, so you have basically wasted another year next year. And then for Cincinnati fans, oh my goodness gracious, there's no words to describe what they could be going through.
I mean, at this point, it seems like he's just got a handshake deal with the owner that he's going to coach as long as he wants. And I mean, that's the only rationale to it, other than, this would have been the year to get rid of him. They obviously didn't make the playoffs, and instead he's back in the fold. So they're clearly ownership is comfortable with him, and the fan base, that's a different story.
And of course, I get a kick out of some of the players talking about how their win, or their last couple of wins, especially the win against Baltimore, proves that just how good they can be. Like, if those games ever matter, for the following season. So when I hear these these announcers always saying, well, maybe there's momentum for the next season when you win week 17. Get momentum. Are you kidding me? I mean, half the rosters aren't even the same nowadays. It's pathetic. It really is. I feel really bad. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's not like I haven't been through it, because I have. I mean, Rex Ryan should never have received his last season when he did, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew it was a waste of time. And so this is what's going on for Buck fans and Bengal fans.
Yeah, I mean, as surprising as the Marvin Lewis thing was, the Cutter thing surprised me even more, because he's so clearly over his head. I mean, Marvin Lewis has reached his ceiling. There's no question about it. But at the same time, he did a nice job with a football team that was, at the Cleveland Browns level, way back when. So
yeah, way back when.
He at least deserves, the benefit of the doubt, even though it's a few years removed now from that. But Cutter's clearly over his head, and I'm surprised that the Bucs stood by him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Marvin Lewis is definitely a better coach than Dirk Cutter on the NFL level. There's no doubt about that. And Marvin Lewis would actually be a very good defense coordinator. And I'm sure that's going to be his next position. I doubt anybody's going to give him a head coaching job again or if maybe he just goes up to the front office in Cincinnati and that's all he ever does the rest of his career, which is very possible. Maybe he'll get some ownership, that wouldn't be a shock either. So, but yeah, there are still coaching jobs out there. I get a kick out of the Jim Schwartz rumors. It's like, come on, and even I'm hearing that the Chargers are going to have to pay up. Now, when I was starting to hear the Chargers are going to have to pay up for their assistants, I was like, please don't tell me that anybody actually wants to hire Gus Bradley as a head coach. But it was about retaining them as coordinators, which I was cool for. But the whole thing with Schwartz, that the fact that the Giants might be interested in at least interviewing him, I mean, seriously, come on. I mean, everybody knows that Jim Schwartz was. I mean, those last couple of years in Detroit, those teams were so disorganized and so bad that I just don't get this fraternity of coaches that we have to go through. It's like Marty Morningweg coming back for Detroit. For Baltimore, it's like, can't you hire other coaches? There are more coaches in the league than the same guys you got to hire over and over again.
I think it excites or nauseates fan bases depending on the names, but I think it's just names get floated out there like that. People have actually heard of Jim Schwartz, so that's the name you stick to. But I mean, obviously he's typecast as somebody that should only be a defensive coordinator going forward.
And what's wrong with that? I mean, nothing's wrong with that at all. I don't get it. I mean, there really isn't anything wrong with that. I mean, look, Dick LeBeau never got his shot, but that's okay. Mike Zimmer finally got his shot, and we'll talk more about him in just a little bit. And it did work out, and I think there were a lot of people that were hoping that he would get his shot because he deserved it. So, but when you get your shot, if you fail, especially when you fail miserably, like some of these guys, Bradley, Schwartz, I'm sorry, there are just other. And I don't mind if they get another opportunity in 3 or 4 years, but it's just too soon. Too soon. Other guys deserve a shot. There's only 32 of them in the NFL. Okay, so let's talk. First of all, let's start with the AFC. We'll start there because that is what is going to kick off everything on Saturday. Matter of fact, this is the only game I'm assuming, because now I do know that there's bad weather going on on the East Coast there. Bottom line is in Florida, in North Florida. So I don't know how the weather is going to be. Sunday's a few days away, so maybe it'll clear out. But Kansas City, you would think, is going to be pretty cold, even though the game starts at 4:30. But that's it. That's the only weather situation, right? That we're probably going to deal with. Again, I'm not sure about Jacksonville. Have you looked?
Yeah, me neither. I would think that it's not going to be as cold as it is right now. Today, I'm 2 hours south of Jacksonville, and it's about the coldest I think that it's been, maybe neck and neck with yesterday. And it's obviously been cold all week.
Will the rain be gone?
Freezes. Yeah, well, rain hasn't really been an issue.
It hasn't.
Rain was an issue on Tuesday. So
okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't looked at the forecast. I have looked at the forecast for this weather game that we're going to talk about here with the Chiefs. And that even looks pretty decent.
It does.
The projections are a sunny day with highs in the 30s. So certainly they've seen worse.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously, and you have to be cognizant of the wind. And don't know about gusts yet. And this is something that you have to look at all times. I part of my handicapping, I have AccuWeather app on my phone, and in my search is probably about 70 cities based on Division One, Mount Pleasant and Ypsilanti, Michigan. Those are in my saved searches. So
okay.
you've got to do it.
Sure.
And so obviously gusts are going to dictate how deep Alex Smith can get the ball and Mariota as well. So I mean you presume that it's going to be a dink and dunk type game, but with gusts only projected to be about 10 miles per hour, then that opens things up a lot.
All right, so that's the weather. Now I must ask you about do you when you handicap games in the regular season, is it completely different or just a little bit different when you do it in the playoffs? Because I me being a trend guy, I was taking a look at these trends myself, so I did a lot of research. And I looked at it, and so my data here showed a very volatile year-by-year situation in Wild Card Weekend. Last year, the home team won and covered every game by 121 to 45 margin. So the home teams last year in the Wild Card Weekend destroyed the road teams. But in 2016, the road team won all four. In 2015, the home team won 3 out of 4. In 2014, the road team won 3 out of 4. And in 2013, the home team won 3 out of 4. So unless you're the person that likes the trends of every other, then maybe you want to pick the road team this year. But fact is, it just shows you that you just don't know. It's one of those things, I guess, that just you're not really going to use.
Yeah, I mean, teams change from year to year, Greg. So I'm really not big on those type of things. The way I look at it, it would be very similar to handicapping a game late in the season because it means so much. Obviously it's winner take all now, and there's no tomorrow for the loser. But it becomes, all right, this is what this team is going to want to establish, and then this is how this other, how the opponent's going to counter, and who's got advantages in matchups, and then you kind of project the game going forward. But games get away from you in the playoffs, particularly on totals, because you do get a do or die factor that maybe teams go into desperation mode earlier than expected. They get shut out because they start dropping back the pass when they should stick to the run. So yeah, I mean, for Chiefs Titans, it's basically a game of Tennessee wanting to hang around as long as possible and probably playing conservatively as a result.
Yeah, I wanted to definitely bring that up, the whole domination last year, whether it was home or not, just because of the fact that there are big spreads, which we do get it in these rounds. In other words, I wouldn't worry about it. Same thing we've talked about during the entire season about winning and covering. I really wouldn't worry about giving up the big spreads, and I'm not worried about giving up the big spread in this first game. The Chiefs are an 8.5, right around 8.5. Is that still about what it is right now? 8.5, 9, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much 8.5, and there are 9s now, and it started at 7. So I mean, that's been a trend that's gone 4 for 4 thus far as betting goes. The opening number has been bet up in every single game.
Okay, so Chiefs are and I feel very confident that they should win this game going away. I'd be very surprised if they didn't, because I really do like. Look, I really like what's going on with the Chiefs because they're actually going about things exactly what we talked about. About 6 weeks ago when they were in their losing streak and we were wondering when they were going to come out of it. And we all talked about, okay, well, see, the Chiefs, what normally happens under Andy Reid coach teams is sooner or later they snap out of it. And when they snap out of it, they slowly, week after week, get better and better and better, just like we saw earlier this season. So if you're somebody like I am that feels like they're now regaining the mojo from earlier this season, that's one of the reasons why I think they're going to cruise in this one, especially because, look at the way the Titans have played the last month. They are very lucky. They played a team that was already in the postseason. that has not been playing well the last couple of weeks. That gave that game. It was another sloppy turnover fest for the Jags. If they had played a bunch of other teams, the Chiefs that were actually needing the win, there's no way the Titans would be in the postseason right now. Now, whether or not that they can come out of that and kind of, okay, whatever, it's a bonus, and let's just go out and play freewheeling and have a good time and no pressure and all that. Okay, well, we'll see, but I just don't see that. I'm not a big Mike Mularkey guy, as you know. First playoff berth since '08 for Tennessee. First playoff coaching appearance for Mularkey against Andy Reid, who's got 11 playoff wins. I love the Chiefs in this one.
I mean, it's going to depend on Mariota as far as how much fun the Titans have, because you are presumably going to have to open up your offense. I mean, I think Matt Nagy's a win here from potentially a head coaching job, probably earlier than he deserves it. But that sparked the Chiefs turnaround, and then if he fares well here, he'll be an even hotter candidate. And as far as Tennessee's concerned, you're going to have to show something offensively that puts points on the board. I mean, that's the reason why they went from being in that hunt for the division to where we thought last week's Titans Jags game was going to be for it, to nearly missing the playoffs and needing to win just to get in. So, and he's been better. He had a better last few games. I don't know if the issue was the shoulder. He's probably the most banged up quarterback remaining in this postseason. So, if he has a good game and they can move the football, the Chiefs are vulnerable defensively. I mean, they masked some of their issues down the stretch, but I could see him hitting a couple of big plays and keeping the Titans in it.
All right, and what do you think DeMarco Murray's absence will do to the running game? We know Derrick Henry is a talented back who could handle the workload. So, is there anything that Tennessee will miss without having DeMarco Murray?
I don't think so. I think they've got the other kid from Toledo. Obviously not Hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's part of the I guess the relief corps, but I am envisioning that it's going to be Derrick Henry getting 25 touches. And again, it's going to depend on how the game starts from the first and second quarter. If Kansas City builds a lead, then you're not going to be able to beat him.
True.
On first and second down. I think Tennessee goes in there trying to slow the game down as long as possible.
And I actually think Kansas City will probably. I'm not going to say that they're. I don't expect that they're just going to try to go. Okay, let's go and play smash mouth football with Tennessee, which is what Tennessee wants to do. Even though Kansas City wants to run the football, I wouldn't be surprised early on. You should see a lot of mixing and matching with some passes, not only to Travis Kelce, but also, of course, to Hill. We've talked a lot about them having to get the ball to Hill, and since Nagy has taken over, they have been getting the ball downfield to Hill. And if the Titans are just a weak secondary, that is their weakness. Byard's having a great year with all his picks, but and I know Ryan's back after being banged up a little. But fact is, if you're going to beat Tennessee, Kansas City, I think, needs to open it up a little bit, and they are a little bit more diverse than Tennessee. Tennessee needs to run the football. They need this to be a low-scoring game, slugfest. That's what they want to do with Mularkey. But if Kansas City gets off to a blazing start, if they take an early touchdown lead, or if, God forbid, for Titans fans, a 2-score lead, Titans are in an all-world hurt because that's not their game. They don't want to play comeback. They want it to be an ugly game like we saw last week.
Yeah, and if you're backing the Chiefs or you're a Chiefs fan, I mean, it could be your worst nightmare if Andy Reid gets in his own head and starts calling for a more conservative game plan just because it's the playoffs, because he's been known to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think if what we've seen over the last few weeks prevails, and you do take shots early, and you play from ahead at home, make it even more difficult.
All right, let's stay in the AFC with game number 2, which is the Sunday early game, Buffalo and Jacksonville. And really nice to see. I mean, look, Tennessee first berth since 08, Buffalo first berth since 99, Jags finally in the postseason as well. So this is really nice to see that these three teams, Jacksonville worst last year in the South to first. So these are nice stories to see these two teams in. Not a surprise, though, to actually see Tennessee and Buffalo win. This has been the problem with the AFC the last few years. We saw it last year with the Dolphins. There's just an issue with the talent level of the AFC at the bottom of those wild card teams. We're seeing it again this year with both Buffalo and Tennessee, but still you're happy for them and for these two teams, because Jacksonville, even though they haven't looked very good the last couple of weeks, let's keep in mind they were on the road. They have won 5 straight at home by a 29-13 margin. They get Lee back at wide receiver, which will help. They're just a different team at home, and part of it is there's two main reasons. One, they got maybe the best defense in football, which is always going to help you at home more than the road. And then they also are very young, which is part of the reason why they're a better team at home. So now the question is will that youth come back to haunt them in this game? I don't think this is the opponent that it hurts them, especially with McCoy's injury, because even if he plays, you can't imagine he's going to be anywhere near 100%. And without McCoy and his explosiveness against that Jags defense, I don't care what I've seen from the Jags the last 2 weeks. I think the Bills are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chargers would have been the ideal team to punish that youth that you speak of.
Agreed.
I think Buffalo is poorly suited to do that.
Yeah, agreed. And this is also probably Tyrod Taylor's last start for the Bills. He's not going to be the starting quarterback next year for the Bills. There's just no way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen the writing on the wall there. We'll see. He's got to play a great game and have his mobility be an asset here. If he's holding the ball, which he has a tendency to do, and obviously disrupts everything else, then the Jaguars are going to have a field day.
Yeah, he's got to beat him also with his legs. I mean, he must find a way. If he could break down that pass rush and escape it a couple of times and find Charles Clay or maybe even Kelvin Benjamin for some big plays down the field, and if their defense, and look, if the Jags have got to get over the turnover hump. I mean, that's the thing too. If it's not a road home thing for their offense, and they just come out and give the game away, well, yeah, they'll lose this game. I mean, the Bills aren't a bad team. So that's how the Bills are going to win this game. It's the only way the Bills win this game is if the Jags are sloppy. So
right, which is a huge testing ground for Blake Bortles to show up and show his own teammates that they can be confident in him, in do or die settings. I mean, this is a big game for him to play turnover free ball, make his throws. Marquise Lee is good to go. Mercedes Lewis is in the mix too, so there's really no excuses. He's got his targets. I think if he plays well, like he did most of the last few months, then they'll be fine. I'll probably win by double digits.
All right. Now, before we leave the AFC, let's talk about the AFC, and that is I'll just look. I've had my futures on my website at primesportsnetwork.com. It's the other website I work for, that I own, of course, the Our Football Radio Network, as I work for, produce these shows, but I keep my handicapping at Prime Sports Network, and of course, since I'm not a pro like you, it's pretty much just futures. I do the picks, but the futures is what we've always talked about, which is what I like to do. So as far as the futures, I'm sitting pretty with a couple of teams as far as my top teams. A couple of teams that I like. That includes Kansas City is probably the team that I have the most money invested in the AFC, of course. Houston was a team that I liked, and I invested in, but things didn't go well there, of course, once Deshaun Watson got hurt. I did invest a little bit lately on Pittsburgh because I do like them. Matter of fact, I am going to go, and the team I have the most on is Kansas City. And they're 25-1 this week, by the way. I already put money on them the last 2 weeks at 16-1 and 18-1. So I'm actually going to go with the Kansas City Pittsburgh championship game. And I will say this, I am actually more upset since I was already going to pick Kansas City to beat the Patriots next week. I am actually more upset about all this news I'm hearing about the Patriots because that's not what I want to hear. I don't want to hear the Patriots circle the wagons with all this us against the world stuff. Since I was already going to pick against them, I don't want this. So I don't know how you think about how that might work into the equation, but we've talked about the offense and Tom Brady not looking good over the last several weeks, and it just hasn't really been. It hasn't been. Even in the Pittsburgh game that we talked about, okay, Brady led them down for that score, but they didn't blitz the Steelers like they did the years before. So I think they're vulnerable. I just hope that all this stuff doesn't get them to rally against everybody. And I think their vulnerability means that maybe this is the type of year where a team like Kansas City and Pittsburgh can come through and play in the championship game.
Well, I'm in agreement with you in that I think you're seeing it the right way. I think one thing we can say, or I can say, safely, is that this will not affect the Patriots in a negative way.
Agreed.
This story, it's not going to cause a crack in the foundation that can't be fixed. It's silly. And anybody, I know, there's sentiment among Patriots fans that ESPN held the story specifically right before the playoffs to cause a distraction. This is not a distraction to the New England Patriots.
And why would they do that? What, do they not like Robert Kraft or something?
Conspiracy theories.
Okay.
The Patriots fans think Spygate and Deflategate were both created for ESPN to boost its ratings. So,
well, then again, isn't Robert Kraft? Isn't he like? Didn't he like? Wait, is it Robert Kraft or no? It was Tom Brady. I was trying to think who was it that was like a Trump guy, because we all know ESPN has turned into like a liberal network. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, I mean that's what they say. To me, it's all nonsense. I mean, they hire conservative people as well. But I mean, not to get too far away from that, I think it's silly to think that the Patriots will.
No, they will not.
Will crumble in regards to
no.
this. So,
that's why I'm worried.
And you're right. They're far more likely to have this piss them off and blow out whoever comes into town for that first playoff game, just to make sure that everybody knows that
who's
you can't
boss.
Get under their skin.
That's right. And by the way, I will say this: if Kansas City, like you said, if Andy Reid takes over this game and it's a sloppy win for the Chiefs, and it looks like they have actually regressed and are going into a shell because it's the postseason, then there's no way. I mean, I'll change my mind next week and I'll be like, okay, futures are one thing, but actually just saying on this show, predicting, I'll change my mind. If I better see what I want to see out of the Chiefs in this game to show me that they can go into Foxborough feeling good about the way they're playing in the postseason and beat that team, because they are going to have to play their best, obviously, to beat the Patriots. As far as the Steelers, it's about Antonio Brown. And if Antonio Brown is back to being healthy, I do like them. I like them to beat the Jags next week. And if they have to play the Steelers, if they have to play the Patriots, at this point in time, I think they can do it. I really do. That's why I'm kind of going with the Pittsburgh Chief thing, but I wouldn't count Pittsburgh out at all, even though they lost to the Patriots, and there are some people who believe they just can't beat them no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I guess the Westgate odds right around New Year's had the Patriots as a 2-3 favorite to win the AFC and a 2-1 to win the Super Bowl. A heavy favorite for both. So you don't want to touch them, obviously. I'm not really happy with the 2-1 return in the AFC for the Steelers. So right now, if I were to do futures, it would be the 10-1 on Jacksonville or Kansas City. Absolutely.
All right.
To get out of the AFC.
Just to get out of the AFC,
yeah. To win it all.
Okay, now let's go to the NFC. And the first game is going to be Saturday night, Atlanta and the Rams. Rams are about a 5.5, 6-point favorite. And first division title since 2003. First home playoff game in LA since 85. First home game at the Coliseum in the playoffs since 1979. So all of those firsts. And speaking of first, number one in the NFL, nearly 30 points per game. That offense against Atlanta's offense, which is still clearly struggling. They're winning because of their defense. They're winning because of Julio Jones. Matt Ryan is able to find Jones in big spots to keep drives alive. But then they get down to the goal line area, and they just can't find a way more times than not to punch it in. Matt Bryant is becoming their biggest weapon over the last few weeks. And I think that's going to hurt him here unless the Rams have stage fright. A lot of these guys haven't played in the postseason before. That's pretty obvious, including Goff and McVay, a young head coach, first time and all that. Falcons with the success in the postseason last year until the Super Bowl. So I can get that. But Atlanta's going to have to go to run through the playoffs on the road, and that's just not going to happen. Not the way they played this year. I'm sorry, but when you constantly have to rely on your field goal kicker and your offensive coordinator is just not getting it, sooner or later it's going to catch up to you, and usually that gets caught up in the postseason on the road, and that's what I think will happen here. I just think the Rams are just too well-oiled of an offense right now. As good as Atlanta's defense has looked recently, I just don't think their offense will be able to keep up. So now the point spread, that concerns me a little. I expect this to be a really good football game, but I think the Rams are going to be able to come out ahead.
Yeah, the spread's a little higher. I mean, they're really throwing caution to the wind on the lack of experience and the fact that it favors, the reigning NFC champs. But look, there's so many variables in this game that it becomes on what do you trust more. And I don't trust a Falcons offense the way I've seen it. It had a double-digit decline in points. I'm very cautious of what the home field advantage is actually going to be.
Mm-hmm. True.
Coliseum at late afternoon and then the early evening. Like, what's that going to be like? Is it going to provide an environment that's going to rattle Matt Ryan? And
no, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
No.
So I mean, there's so much to think about in this game. And then the Rams, the kicking situation, if it is closer than expected, and it does come down to a field goal.
Yeah.
How confident are you in that situation? It
not
clearly
at all.
was an issue last week. So,
yeah.
Lots to digest here.
Yeah, you probably see McVay going for it a lot in some situations that are borderline. If he's got a flip of the coin call, he's going for it. I don't think there's any question about that. Maybe early in the game he might want to give his field goal kicker a shot in the arm. Hey, maybe see if the kid gets some confidence. I'll let him kick a field goal, maybe. But I don't know. We'll see. Levitri being out, okay, that hurts. He's not the best lineman on the team, but he's a good one. But other than that, this Ram defense, I think, should be good enough to be able to come up with a couple of big stops, especially that front wall. I think that they should be able to, do a good job penetrating Matt Ryan. And again, unless Matt Ryan can escape the pass rush a couple of times and find Julio Jones to keep drives alive, I just think that Ram offense is looking way too good right now. That's the only thing that concerns me is the stage fright. By the way, the Falcons 0-2 straight up and against the spread this year as a dog. They've only been a dog twice. They lost to New Orleans. By the way, interesting enough that it was almost the same score in both games. The only reason why it was 23-13 in New Orleans was that late touchdown Atlanta had. But it was New Orleans 23-13, New England 23-7. And I don't think that that's going to change. Maybe the spread. I don't know. If I'm taking the spread, as I've always said, I'll go ahead and take the Rams. But I'm going to stay away from the cover here. I'm just going to go ahead and take the Rams to win this game.
3 names: Julio Jones, Aaron Donald, Todd Gurley. Who has the most impact?
You know what? I would actually, since I'm going with the Rams, it's between Gurley and Donald, and I'd probably go with Donald. I think that defensive front has got to cause serious damage because I don't know if anybody can cover Julio Jones. So I think if you're going to get to Matt Ryan and that passing game, you got to get to him. So I think that's what we'll see.
I think it'll be the most competitive and fun matchup of the weekend.
Yeah, I also like the fact that it is in L.A. and it's a night game and the weather. So that's the other thing that benefits the Rams is that they're not like in some sort of cold weather environment situation, which they may have to be in next week. Could be in Minnesota next week, even though that's not going to be cold either. But they could be in
indoors, but cold outside.
Yeah, cold outside.
Bed in the morning.
Cold outside. But they could be in a cold weather situation. Maybe I guess it could be in. Could they be in? No. Where could they be if New Orleans wins? Where would they be? Would they be in Philly? If New Orleans wins
this weekend?
No, next weekend. So if Carolina wins, and let's say Carolina wins and the Rams win, then Carolina goes to Philly.
Then they're in Carolina because it's New Orleans and Philly.
Yeah, so it's Carolina goes to Philly, and then so if New Orleans would go to Philly if they win
for next week's matchup, the New Orleans Carolina winner goes to Philly.
Oh, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. So it doesn't
Right.
matter.
The Rams are
The Rams
facing.
are in Minnesota if they win. Okay, so there
There
you
you
go.
go.
But anyway, fact is, Rams don't have to worry about bad weather. So because they're not going to anywhere bad weather, I guess the only opportunity they would have for bad weather, I guess there isn't any unless I guess they could play in
Oh,
Philly.
NFC Championship
Philly,
and
yeah,
Philly
yeah, they could be
potentially.
in Philly, yeah, which ain't gonna happen. All right, so we'll get to that in just a second. But let's talk about Carolina, New Orleans, and I think this is clearly the best game though of the weekend in my mind. Probably also because I am picking. This is the only game I'm picking a dog to win, Carolina, and I don't really care about what happened last week. I don't even care about what happened in Tampa Bay, and I think that's part of the reason why that the line is about 7. And the reason I don't care is because Carolina is going to get healthier in this game. You're going to see Shepard out there, Stewart out there. You're going to see Trey Turner back. You're going to see Kurt Coleman back. This is as healthy as the Panthers are going to be all season, so that's huge. And look, I'm a big Saint fan. We've said it from the very beginning of the season when they were one of my sleeper teams. Matter of fact, in my futures, I was able to grab them earlier in the season at 40-1 on September 10th and 50-1 on October 5th. That's how much I have on the Saints. So I believe in the Saints. I just got this little feeling. This is a feeling thing that I have that Carolina is going to win the NFC. And obviously, I think we both agree whoever wins this game is going to beat Philly with Nick Foles. So that's another reason why I like Carolina, because if they win this game, they beat Philly, and then I'm willing to take the chance in them in the championship game. But really good matchup here. Division rivals, you like that. Let's keep in mind that the last 4 years there have been 2 wild card round division matchups, and the road team has won both of them. And I'm only saying that just to let everybody know that just because they're at home, it doesn't just give the Saints the right to win the game as a division opponent. Saints have covered 6 straight against Carolina. 5 of those, though, were as dogs. But look, it's I think a really great game, and I do expect Carolina to up their game to make this a very exciting football game.
Well, Carolina is currently the biggest long shot in the NFC according to Westgate at 15-1. So based on what you like, get on that because it's obviously going to dwindle. Because the winner of this one's likely going to be a road favorite in Philadelphia for the reasons that you stated.
You're right.
That's probably a short favorite, field goal or so, but they will be favored. So you'll see those future odds decline. So I mean, for you who like the Panthers, anybody in the listening audience who like the Panthers, now's the time to jump on them future wise. I don't give out picks on the show because I sell them, but for the listeners, a freebie is New Orleans from my pick of the week because it's already in, and I know I'm going to make it. And I recommend getting in also if you can at 6.5. It's going to rise to 7, and probably a little more by the time we get to the end of Sunday, considering it's the final game of the foursome. Mostly the betting public goes on the favorite in those games. To me, I just think New Orleans matches up extremely well against Carolina. Carolina hasn't been able to stop them on the ground. Where they're one of the best run defenses in the whole league, and yet their 2 worst performances came against the Saints.
No, that is the one thing that I fear the most in liking Carolina is this matchup doesn't seem to go with Carolina. We just went over the dog situation. I mean, I have picked New Orleans against Carolina in like 4 straight regular season games because of their recent success before that, because it's been for so long. And I've definitely, even both games this year, I took New Orleans against Carolina in the regular season based on the matchup. But again, this is the postseason. So I do think this is a little bit different. But that matchup does concern me because talent-wise, I think Carolina is just as talented, if not more talented, than the Saints are. But this matchup, just for whatever reason, over the last few years, has been really all New Orleans in situations where even when they're the dog, if they don't win, they overachieve in the game and make it closer than people think. So we never know why those matchups are the way they are sometimes like this. And I can't tell you because they didn't have the running game the last 3 years. So there's just, I don't know. I don't know if there's any specific thing of why New Orleans seems to match up well with Carolina, other than for me to just think that, again, sometimes those types of divisional trends don't necessarily equate to the postseason. But that's we may see that happen again.
I mean, look, because New Orleans hasn't had a very good defense over the last few years, so you can't call it a tendency thing against Cam Newton. And at the same time,
yeah, true.
The offense is completely different this time around for Sean Payton. So you can't call it a strength against strength type deal that New Orleans always gets over. But it does need to be pointed out. I mean, the last time they played, Ingram and Kamara combined for 248 yards and 3 scores. And they won convincingly. In the first game, which was a blowout in week 3,
it was all breeze.
It was all breeze.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, look, and I think if there's an area where you can make inroads against to what I think is, I've got the Saints going to the Super Bowl, so the difference maker in the NFC, that partnership between Kamara and Ingram, it's probably Carolina that stops it with Kuechly and Thomas Davis and Shaq Thompson is healthy. So, it's a dangerous game for me, but I'm technically pot committed with the Saints as my Super Bowl pick to win an NFC champion, and I like the matchup very much.
Hey, I'm all for the Saints if they win this game too, because again, we both agree whoever wins beats Philly. And I told you, and look, besides New Orleans, I took Carolina 25-1 on November 16th, Carolina 14-1 on the 22nd of December, Carolina 18-1 on the 31st, and then I doubled the 18-1 on January, actually on this week's report. So I'm all in on Carolina and New Orleans. Those are like my two top future teams next to the Chiefs in the AFC. So yeah, whoever wins this game, if the Saints win it, I'll be right on board with the Saints to come out of the NFC. So we'll see how it goes. Should be a lot of fun. First postseason meeting between these two teams. First playoff appearance for the Saints since 2011, if you can believe that. All right, so in general, though, Philly, they went from worst to first, so they are going to get their home playoff game next week against the winner of this one. But, yeah, I don't think there's any way for us to believe that the winner of this game ain't going to beat the Eagles. You just got to feel sorry for Eagle fans. Carson Wentz, they were looking so good, and boy, Nick Foles just hasn't looked good right now. So I don't know what they're going to do or what they're going to change. But they better make some changes before next week's football game if they're going to have a chance against either one of these two teams. And then the other question is going to be if it's the Rams or Atlanta in Minnesota. Do you think it'll be different? Do you think you might think of that game differently depending on who the opponent is?
Yeah, I mean, I would, and I'll tell you the main reason is that building and the fact that the Vikings do have the best defense remaining in either conference, and that crowd will make it hell for whoever the quarterback is, and I'd rather have Matt Ryan in that situation than Jared Goff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see myself maybe changing I think it's going to depend on how the game goes. Like if Atlanta wins the game where they continue to struggle to score, but Goff throws like 3 interceptions or something, then I'll probably be like, okay, fine, still like Minnesota. But if Atlanta comes out and all of a sudden their offense looks like they did against, say, Seattle a couple of months ago, then I might go, okay, well, maybe I'll actually take Atlanta next week against Minnesota. So that's all going to depend on what I see if Atlanta wins. I don't think they're going to win, but if they win. But if the Rams go into Minnesota, I get the feeling that it's probably one and done for the Rams. I think it might be asking too much unless they smoke the Falcons. Then I might change my mind. We
could see Todd Gurley just completely take over the season and
postseason
run right through them.
True, that is true.
That could be possible.
Of course, the Rams had already played Minnesota earlier this year, and they didn't have a good game in Minnesota. What do you think about what you've heard from Mike Zimmer? I mean, I am all for, as we've said, when Zimmer came out and made the comments where he would kind of keep every week not tipping his hand about Keenum, and I'm all for that stuff as long as you're going to come out and be honest about it and not come out with some crazy statement about the whole quarterback thing and, well, we'll see and that's okay. It keeps the pressure on the players, and I'm all fine with that. But I think there is a time where, especially now, when the Bradford thing came out about him practicing, where when the question was posed to him this past week, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't understand why he would even open up any sort of doors at all for Sam Bradford. I mean, why can't he just come out and say this is Case Keenum's team now? I mean, he should really say that.
I don't think he has to. Especially since he's more Belichick than most anybody. He just likes to keep things in house and really doesn't give you much. I think if he says it in the quarterback room, and again, I don't know what the dynamic is in there. I mean, Bradford to me doesn't strike me as the alpha type that's going to get his feathers ruffled because Case Keenum is the guy right now. I mean, to me, he seems like a really congenial guy. Is it just a matter of, well, Sam was a starter before he got injured. Let him continue to work and progress, and he'll be there as a safety net. But yeah, I don't think you make a change right now. And I didn't necessarily see it as leaving the door open as more as I don't want to really answer your question because I don't feel I have.
What do you think happens with that quarterback situation with that team? Do you think it does all depend on what Minnesota does, what Keenum does in the postseason, or do you think that? Because I would think that that's what's going to happen. I think if Case Keenum goes out there next week, throws 3 interceptions, and they lose the game, then if you're Minnesota, you're bringing Bridgewater back. And you're going, I'm going to commit to him. But if Keenum takes this team at least to the championship game and they don't lose because of him, then I think I got to invest in Keenum. And I would probably also try to keep Bridgewater here if I could. But if I get a really good deal on the table for Bridgewater, then I probably might have to think about taking that as well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with all of that. You really right now are waiting for the story to write itself. And you of all organizations know the value of having at least 2 competent quarterbacks on the roster.
I think Sam Bradford, no matter what, though. I mean, well, look, if you trade away Bridgewater and keep Keenum, then sure, you bring Bradford back and you're fine. You go, okay, you guys compete next year. And I'm fine with that, too. But the 2 of those guys have to stay. I don't think there's any doubt that the Vikings can't get rid of both Bradford and Bridgewater. They got to keep one of them. Even if Keenum leads them to the Super Bowl and they lose the Super Bowl, you definitely have to bring back at least one of them.
And I think at this point, unless he's terrible, the most ideal scenario is him returning as your starting quarterback and Bridgewater, who will get you the most value out there, gets traded.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is going to be tricky. Is going to be what will teams pay for Bridgewater because I think the high level has to be late first. That's high level for me. I don't think there's any way a team can trade a mid to early first round pick on a guy that hasn't played in over 2 years, because of injury. So will the Vikings feel like an early second round pick? Like, let's say the Jets decide, you know what, let's use the picks on something else. So let's trade down because 3 of the 4 quarterbacks are gone and they don't want Baker Mayfield or they don't want to pick him at 6. They don't value it there. And they pick someone else at 6 and then they trade a second round pick to the Vikings and maybe throw in something else in the package. That's a likely scenario. And that's something that the Vikings, saying, okay, we get an early second round pick and something else in the package. That might be as best as they can get.
Right. I mean, they're a victim of circumstance that has technically risen above it to now where they're going to get something out of all this strife with their quarterback injuries the last 2 years.
All right, sounds good. So big weekend, and it's all going to end on Monday with the championship game. So I know we don't get a chance too much to talk about college football, even though we did start the conversation talking college football. So I guess we will end it talking college football. And that's a championship game. So we talked last week about, I thought the winner of the Georgia, the Rose Bowl would beat the winner of the Sugar Bowl. You said the exact opposite. So I always thought, of course, that's always a nice thing to debate about. But anyway, so I'm not sure if you've changed your mind or not. But the fact is that obviously I haven't changed my mind after the game on Monday night, which was or Monday afternoon, late in the afternoon. It was just a tremendous football game. And I thought Georgia just played so. I mean, they upped their game offensively to a point that even though we all knew Oklahoma didn't have a good defense, fact is Georgia's offense was phenomenal, and they were even better than maybe they even thought they would be. So we know they're not going to run all over Alabama. We get that. But Alabama, they couldn't move the football too much against Clemson. I don't think they're going to move the ball on Monday night. I think the way they beat Georgia is the same way that they beat Clemson. They're going to need some turnovers. Jennings goes out with the injury, which is another injury to a key player in that defense for Alabama. How many of those injuries can they keep, getting by and winning in these big games? I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So again, unless Georgia gives the game away with turnovers, I just think right now they're an all-around better team, a healthier team, and that's why I'm going to stick with Georgia to beat Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, that Jennings injury is really tough. You figure that you needed him on board to help contend with Georgia's back. I was on Georgia in the Oklahoma game, and pulling my hair out over the terrible play calling in that first half.
Oh, I know, right?
The ball down their throats.
I know.
So, I mean, that is a concern if I'm on Georgia here. What the trust, considering you almost, realistically just fumbled your competitive advantage away by waiting until it was too late. And Oklahoma thankfully left that door open with that dumb squib pick.
That is true. That's true. Even though it was a 55-yard field goal, so you do have to give the player credit. So it wasn't a gimme.
Yeah, I think the squib kick was the kicker kind of messing up a ton, because it was probably going to be just a normal squib kick.
Yeah.
And he whiffed on it.
Yes.
But
you don't put him in that situation though.
Right, exactly. And you have to kick the 55 yards. So kudos to Blankenship. But the fact is that Georgia left a lot of opportunities on the board, and maybe they'll be able to have that edge against Alabama. I think Hurts can move the ball against Georgia, and I think I don't know whether this will be a positive or a negative, but I think Alabama has a sense of entitlement. The fact that they didn't get to be the SEC champions this year, that might work to their favor.
Yeah, I mean, they are a proud program. They've got a great coach, a great college coach. And so I think it might, and I know we're hearing about, Saban and his former assistants, he always beats them and all that. Okay, fine.
Right.
But I think that works to an extent. And because, I don't think he's ever faced a team that's this good. I don't know. You tell me, but I don't think he has. So I think this is, and it is the national championship game, and he only had a week to prepare as opposed to a month, which should favor Georgia. So they don't have Nick Saban studying them for a whole month. So I think that helps them. The injuries help them. And I just think that, look, both teams have a very good defense. And the difference to me is Georgia's got more talent on offense. Damian Harris is a good running back, but Chubb and Michelle are a better duo than what Alabama has. And it's up to Fromm to make sure he doesn't turn over the game. If he doesn't have a couple of picks, game-changing picks, things of that nature, if they're limited pretty much to turnover-free game, I feel very confident if that happens that they win the football game. I'm not trying to denigrate Alabama in saying that. I am just very confident that as long as Georgia doesn't give the game away, they are a better team. And part of that is Alabama has 3 or 4 key guys on defense out, and that's their strength, because they're not a good offensive team compared to what they were last year.
Yeah, the total for the national runner-up game is now 44 after opening at 46.
Okay.
And Bama's now 3.5-4 after opening at 4.5-5.
Interesting. So, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not really surprised about that.
Georgia belief.
That was a high number, I thought, but that was expected. Alabama, that I could understand Alabama having the high number. What do you think the ratings are going to be? People were talking about the ratings are going to be low because it's an SEC championship game again. This is what happened against LSU. This is what precipitated the whole playoff formula, because they didn't want 2 teams from the same conference from the Southeast playing each other.
Right.
So I don't know. Of course, we're diehards. We're going to watch the game. But I don't know. I can understand what people are saying, but what do you think? Do you think that this game is going to capture the imagination of the country?
Well, the numbers will tell a story, but in this day and age, sometimes they lie, because there's so many ways to consume this game. You can watch it on all sorts of ESPN simulcasts with other coaches, and celebrities, and all that nonsense. I think bottom line is, if you were going to watch this game in Pac-12 country before it was 2 SEC teams, you're going to watch it now. And if you weren't, then you're not.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, unless because of the amount of people who did watch and tune into the Oklahoma Georgia game, unless they were taken by, okay, let me see if this Georgia team, which isn't usually in this spot, and fans usually, I can see fans wanting to see something new. Let's see if Georgia can go up against Big Bad Alabama. I'm interested in that. That was a nice little comeback win they had in this really classic Rose Bowl game. So let me see if they can do it. This quarterback, this ex Little League pitcher. I'm interested in that story. And let's remind everybody too that there are two of the top defensive players in all of college football will be on display in Minkah Fitzpatrick for Alabama and Roquan Smith for Georgia. So those are two really great players that'll be high draft picks come April.
Make no mistake, UCF got screwed by the committee, and I was telling you guys on this podcast and on Twitter and whatever that we were getting screwed as we were getting screwed because they made a conscious effort to make sure that if things boiled down, I don't think they would have been top 8. Maybe they would have gotten if they were being voted on legitimately. I think that would have been their ceiling is 8. So I'm not saying that they belonged in the playoff, but these are the two best teams. UCF is just your national champions because they're undefeated.
Hey, I'm publicity wise, marketing wise, I'm all for it. So, because payout wise, see, it doesn't matter to me. I ain't a Georgia fan. So payout wise, financially, since I have money on Georgia to win the national championship, I'm going to get that money no matter whether they're proclaimed national champion or not. So I'll thumbs up on Central Florida being the national champion. So I'm all for that.
There you go. Yeah, I don't think casinos are going to pay out on any UCF futures.
No, but that's unfortunate. No, that won't work. All right, excellent, Tony. So we'll look forward to having a really big show next week. That, as you said in the opening of the show, might actually be definitely for the NFL. It's the best weekend of the year when you get those big games coming up next week. So looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Man. Be good. Take care.
Thanks, Tony. All right, that's Tony Mejia, VegasInsider.com, and that is going to wrap it up here on the show. By the way, I did do an interview. I did a couple of interviews this past week, one with Anthony Dasher, who covers Georgia football. So that's available on demand. He was at the game, so I interviewed him the day after the game when he traveled to Vegas. So that's available at ourlads.com. And I also previewed the game with Mike Huguenin from gridironnow.com. That's a college football website, covers a lot of SEC football. So Mike has been in the business for over 30 years, knows a lot about the SEC, knows everything about the SEC. So I had an in-depth, long conversation with Mike. That's available on demand as well at ourlads.com. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. You can check us out on YouTube at under Prime Sports Network, also iTunes under Prime Sports Network. Go to Our Lads, though, not only for the Our Lads Football Radio Network, but for all of our upcoming free agency and NFL draft coverage, which is actually going to start with the Cleveland Browns. I'm already doing research on the first of 32 NFL teams to preview for the offseason, the Cleveland Browns. That content will be coming up real soon, and we'll have some shows as well. And Dan Shanka will join me on Monday to preview the national championship game. So for Tony Mejia, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to OFN NFL Preview on the Our Lads Football Radio Network.